And good morning. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend Dave Petzos joining us from the Petzo Center, Petzo Financial on Facebook and Twitter. Dave, good to have you with us.
Always good to be here, Kevin.
So,
you know what? This is my favorite thing about Mondays.
Well, thank you. I was going to say, does anybody work at Channel 7 anymore? I mean, you got Maggie's on vacation for having a kid, another kid. Doug's on vacation.
The robot was doing the camera.
Right. You got Brian, you got Morgan, and there's Dave. And I'm going,
different. I've never done that with them before.
Right.
Brian did a great job this morning. He really did.
He looked like he was grilling you, actually.
He was after it.
Yeah. And you think to yourself, So let's talk a little bit about a big week for earnings. Obviously, for retail, you're going to have a lot of our favorite retail outlets, those that are still in business, reporting. What does this mean to the overall consumer?
No, this is huge, and you bring up two really good points. Retail is changing dramatically. Let's face it. Well, last week we had Walmart going up 9% in a day because their sales were so good. They're competing online real well with Amazon, better at any rate, and their stock took off. On the very same day, Kevin, JCPenney's was down 27% to just over $1 a share. This is a company barely in business right now. So it's
wait a minute,
really
can you repeat that?
$1
a share for JCPenney.
Isn't that crazy? It's just crazy. They've tried to reinvent themselves, but not. So we're in this flux, right? We're retail, but retail's not dead. Sales were up 6%, over 6% year over year. It's a great number, and as far as the consumer goes, we've been talking about the wage growth, and the job situation. With wages now, total wages paid. Now, again, I want to reiterate what total wages paid means. That's how much of an increase plus how many hours of increase as well. So total wages increasing of over 5% means the consumer's flush and getting flusher, and this is just great news for all of retailing, whether it's online or not. It doesn't change the fact that there's going to be great disarray out there as we work our way through the online evolution.
How different is this economy than it was under the last few years of Obama?
Kevin, it's interesting. I actually had a caller calling in and arguing that the Obama years were fantastic, and that's what's responsible for all of this.
I'm sure that went over well with you.
Yeah, I thought it was a little weird. If you don't like Trump, you don't like Trump. That's fine, and if you loved Obama, that's great. But to talk about the economy and giving him credit is crazy. It is way different. It is such a different environment right now because we've seen not only the unemployment rate plummet, but we've also seen government spending slowing down. In other words, when we see the number of jobs that are being created, it's in the private sector. Really exclusively. If anything, government is shrinking a bit right now on the employment side. That's hugely positive, as we all know. But deregulation, everything else has really got as you and I called it before, the animal spirits going for small business. People are expanding and growing and feel like government's getting out of their way. The biggest thing long term, though, I'm going to reiterate because it really isn't going to show up in numbers. You can't prove something that doesn't happen. But we're not going to see corporations moving overseas anymore. And so I think that's going to be long-term with a decent tax code. You're going to see corporations expand and stay in the United States, and you're going to see more companies actually locating here, foreign companies, because we are more competitive. We have energy. We have all the things they need, rule of law, safety, all of those things that corporations want to stay. And now we've decided we're not going to tax them out of our country. It's a huge thing, and you can't prove companies staying, but they are going to.
Dave Petzo joining us here, talking about the good news of the economy. Let's talk a little bit about some of the risks from CNBC this morning. The biggest risk to emerging markets isn't Turkey, it's China.
Wow, it always is. China's a huge threat out there. You know this. You smelled this one a long time ago. You smelled this before you moved to Boise decades ago.
I remember when you were laughing at me about China. But that's okay.
Laughing at you.
Everybody laughs at me. That's,
And until we are brought in as part of the Borg.
Exactly.
We get it.
Right. China, Trump. We're brothers in arms here. You the optimist, me, well, still working on that.
You are. I see a new you anyway. That vacation did a lot of good for you. I'll tell you.
So back to China. You've still got the problems in the South China Sea,
Yep.
North Korea. Turkey's getting a lot of pub lately, but China's always lurking.
Yeah. First of all, China, or I should say Turkey. Let's start there. Turkey's GDP is smaller, excuse me, than the state of Florida. The state of Florida.
Wow.
Now, that's just not going to take the world down. I get the whole East-West. It's a linchpin. It's the Muslim world and the Western Christian world. It's all those things. It's a very important country geopolitically. But as far as the economy and the economy causing problems and contagion and all that, I disagree with. I don't think it's going to be a European banking problem. So I just think that it's just one of those things that, like we'd like to do, Kevin, we've got to find out what's wrong in the world fast, because we've got to report it today. It's a 24-hour news cycle. We've got to find it. What is it? Oh, it's Turkey today.
That is their job, though. You want them to ignore the crisis that's going on?
Okay, you want to digress? I'm going to digress.
I wasn't digressing. I was protecting my lovely brothers and sisters in the media. We're solidarity.
Your solidarity here. I tell you, what if the news was reported every year or two? You think we'd spend all this time jabbering about little tiny daily things?
Then we wouldn't be informed. But you go back to Turkey, which you put it. It's very fascinating because you could argue that it's always the gateway between Europe and the Middle East. And is it Asia? Is it Europe? Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating country.
Fascinating, yes, it is.
So here we have Erdogan, who, and I was doing some research on this. He's a big believer in cheap money, and because the interest rates are going up, now he's in big trouble. Mm-hmm. So you take a look at, you think, look, we live in Idaho. To pull a Dave Petzo here on Dave Petzo, why is this such a big story?
Right.
How does this impact us in the gem state?
I don't think it does. That's really the point, Kevin. We find sometimes stories where they really aren't a big story. It's a story. I think this is a geopolitical. But it's more of a deep thought than is going to fit for the news. So that then all we talk about is the collapsing lira and will it cause contagion and the European banks are in trouble. We make up stuff that will work for a soundbite. But what you're talking about is deeper thought. What does this mean to the Middle East? What does it mean to the East-West relationship? Because it is such a fascinating country. It was a modern country. Now it's rolling backwards again. All these countries, and I don't want to say Muslim, but Middle Eastern countries seem to roll through these periods where they are trying to become more, if you will, enlightened, where women have rights and things like that. And then somebody takes over, like Erdogan, and it becomes very conservative in their terms again,
right?
And they pull back. That's where we're at with Turkey right now, and it is disconcerting because it is such an important nation to that region.
Dave Petzo joining us from the Petzo Center. So I'm watching Hard Knocks, and Hard Knocks this year is about the Cleveland Browns, and they always find these unique characters on Hard Knocks, and you have this defensive lineman who's explaining compound interest, and he said, look, if you have $1 million and if you leave it in the bank for 10 years, you're going to have another $1 million. You're going to, because you're going to get 10%. Now, I don't think you get 10% interest off $1 million if you put it in a savings account or a checking account at a bank. And I thought this would be a good question for Dave Petzo and the power of compounding interest. And they said, don't buy a luxury this, don't buy this, that, and the other. And it was really fascinating. This kid's about 23, 22, if that. Mm-hmm. And he was so like an evangelical about compound interest. So for us mere mortals that could barely spell compound interest, I'm talking about myself, what was he getting at, and was that true?
Yeah, it is absolutely true. And we've seen, from the days of even Abraham Lincoln talked about it one time, very eloquently about how compound interest doubles. So you would go back a long, long time, of course, but it's really, as Einstein called it, the eighth wonder of the world. And whether that's really his quote or somebody else's, I don't care. It's something that is amazing and astounding. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And you can get 0.2% at the bank. That's, with $1 million, you might be able to negotiate yourself into less than a half a point, but it's not much, okay? And you do need to get to double money in 10 years. It's 7.2% interest, and the only place you're going to get that is going to be the stock market, and that historically is less than you've gotten in the stock market. So he's right. But let me give you an example. I think of as an everyday common one that I love to give young people. And that is a cup of coffee a day, $5 a day. And I don't care if it's a cup of coffee. I know you go to happy hours to try to save all that money after work with your buddies and stuff like that. that's even more money. But let's just say 1 cup of coffee a day for 40 years. Kevin, what do you think that equals in the stock market? $1.2 million. See, what we're missing on this, and what I think that this lineman was saying also was, don't buy this luxury item, because in 10 years you're going to have 2 of those luxury items. Everything we make a choice on, a cup of coffee or $1.2 million. Which would you like? And I'm not saying you can't have a cup of coffee. I'm not saying you can't go with your pals to go have a beer after work. You can, but understand the choice you're making. It's a long-term choice. Nobody walks around, and I don't mean to be picking on anybody that is having trouble putting their kids through school or giving them the ability to do it without huge student debt. But nobody sits around in their 20s and 30s and 40s buying boats and taking trips and getting an extra cabin up in McCall, spending more money than they have, and actually sits down and says, I really don't care if my kids get an education. I really don't care. Nobody says that out loud, but that's the choices that we make. And again, you want to buy a boat? Buy a boat. It's your choice. But know that we're swapping off every time, because resources, unless you are a billionaire, really are limited. You have to make choices in life. And that's what I simply think people need to understand. And compound interest really brings that out. A cup of coffee a day, $1.2 million over 40 years.
Well, coming up next, we'll ask Dave Petzo if he agrees with Dave Ramsey. And if you have a question, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. All right, Dave Petzo joining us here, KIDO Talk Radio. Now, for years and years, Dave Ramsey has said you need to pay off all your debts first. Dave Ramsey has had a big run. I can't remember. There's a big national profile of him. And they said the only problem people have with the Dave Ramsey thing is people are missing out on the compound interest. He says you need to pay all your debts off first and then start investing.
Right.
Live like no one else so you can live like no one else. What say you, Dave Petzo?
Both. It's both.
What are you running for office?
Yeah. I think Dave Ramsey's all wet when it comes to paying off the house and things like that before you really get up and go with retirement plans. And he's beginning to temper that. He's changed that a good bit. Consumer debts, yes. He wants those gone. I do too. There's another reason why, and that's the psychological part, and that is unless you work your way through it and you handle it and get your bills paid, then you don't change. When people, this is one of the things we counsel people, for example, well, why don't I take some money out of my 401k and then, pay off these bills and get rid of this high interest stuff? And the reason why is because you haven't paid a price, so you will not learn. You'll go right back into the same habits. And if we don't change those habits, just taking money or waving a magic wand and making it go away does not help. That person will immediately go back into debt. And so we need to actually work through that. And that's an important thing. So pay off the debt, the consumer debt, the cars and all that nonsense. You've got to get rid of that stuff. Bring your spending in line. And don't let it happen again. Create the emergency fund so that when life happens, and life will happen, it's just called life. It's not called, my poor bad luck. Everybody has poor bad luck. It's called life. And so we have to be ready for that for emergencies. But as far as starting 401k plans and getting that compounding going, Kevin, that's absolutely mandatory. You cannot buy back the years of compounding, and that's the issue. And what we have to think about, though, let's go back to compounding for just 1 minute. What people don't realize is it's that final 8 years or 9 years when you get that double in your investments. Because what it means is if you wait for, let's say, 10 years before you start putting money away seriously for retirement, you miss the last 10 years of compounding. You miss the $1 million to $2 million, the $500,000 to $1 million, whatever one it is. You miss that double. You don't miss the first double. You miss the last one. And that is the big one. That's the one that allows for retirement. That's the game changer, and you're not there to play it. So you have to get started, and I mean yesterday. If you don't have money getting put away now, then you are dead wrong. I don't care what your strategy is. You've got to put $50 a month, just something. Get it started, and getting started is the key. You start, you can get going, you can increase it over the years, but if you don't start, you will never start.
So you believe, though, that you should work on your consumer debt first, and then what? When you just have your house, and again,
Yep.
We're being philosophical here. Dave Ramsey says this, Dave Petzo says this. Again, both are great advice, but so get rid of your consumer debt, you think? if possible.
You have to. You have to dig out of consumer debt, cut up the credit cards, change your lifestyle. I think even in that process, you can begin to take advantage of 401ks. If they're giving you free money and matching, you need to do that. You need to take advantage of free money. It's free, and all you have to do is put up a little bit of money to do it. I think they can be done hand in hand. If you don't have a matching program, then get your consumer debt paid off first. So there are individual circumstances where you might want to move one way, and another individual, similar but a little different circumstances, moves another way, and both are correct. And you have to evaluate whether you have a 401k option or not. With matching, free money, do it. But what I see very often when we're working with people who are, if you will, in trades and things like that, and they may have a retirement plan available, but there isn't a seriousness about who's going to take care of them in retirement, and so they almost use it as a piggy bank. That's a disaster, and that never works, and these people are destined to have absolutely no money when their backs give out. They can't crawl under houses or on top of houses anymore. You can't just go out and make money. You've got to put some of it away, because as we get older, you can't do some of the things you could do easily when you're 25 years old.
More with Dave Petzo next. Traffic and weather together.
7 Larry Gebert.
All right. Thank you very much, Larry Gebert. Kevin Miller here. Our great friend Dave Petzo. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Now, what do you say, though, to people that don't have the retirements and they're going to cash out when they have their own business? You know, their retirement is selling their business.
Yep.
Do you deal with that a lot?
Yeah, and I think that's great if you have a business that transitions, that has great value. I don't disagree with that, but I think in many cases it's an excuse. In fact, I know it is, because you also have the possibility, it's not a problem, but if we're talking about, well, I'm going to sell my business in 20 years and everything's fine and great. Well, what if you have problems in your business? I mean, we all do. That's always a possibility, or a person gets sick or hurt. There's a lot of different reasons why that business may diminish in value or have no value. The second part is that most businesses do not have a continuing value that is much more than that person's salary. Okay? It's, people basically have a business that is a job. And when you walk away, it's worth nothing more than the tools or a couple trucks, a fleet of trucks, whatever. It's just some inventory items. It's not worth a lot. It's not what you think, just because it's generating you a couple $100,000 a year or maybe more in income does not mean that somebody else is going to say, well, that is so fantastic. Here's a couple $1 million, so I can do that. They're not going to. And so that's part of the problem. And also transitioning out. Who are you going to sell to? What kind of terms are you going to have? A younger junior partner, that's fine. Do they have the financing to do it? And what would you do if you ended up getting that business back? A lot of problems, and also it really lacks diversification. So have a couple prongs going. You don't have to create millions and millions of dollars on the side, but you should be having other retirement plans going as well, just in case something goes wrong.
Well, I have a friend of mine who, has his own business, and he's been working with a financial advisor for many, many years, and believes in the Roth and those sorts of things.
Right.
And now, is that possible? To max those out every year?
You should. That's a gift. If you have the ability to contribute, and if you're doing particularly well, you don't. Because your income may be too high. But if you qualify, a Roth is the only place you can put money where it grows and comes out tax-free. A fantastic investment. We just really have a gift with it, and people should all take advantage of that.
So what do they mean by maxing it out?
It's only $6,000 a year. So $6,000 a year. It's not that much. It's not, but it is something you should do. The other ones you max out would be a 401k, simple plans, and there you can put $20,000-$30,000 away without too much trouble.
The challenge, though, it would seem, when you do that, is that's taxable.
Yeah.
So if your tax rate is such and such, it
Yep.
might be more in retirement than it is.
It can be. It's interesting, Kevin. You bring up a really important point, and when you're talking about diversification of assets,
I'm rolling today.
You are rolling, man, alive. I'm telling you, we didn't do a couple hours.
I don't know if I
of
could even
education
pronounce
here.
diversification of assets, but anyway.
You're diversifying your tax brackets or your tax structure as well. And so you bring up a very good point. You don't want to have all your money in IRAs, because then it all comes out taxable later and could be and inhibits your flexibility. Because if you're going to be in a 40% tax bracket, then goodness gracious, every time you take $50,000 out for a new car, you have to take out $80,000 or more just to pay the taxes. That's a pretty expensive car. So you wind up with a circumstance where we want to have diversification of assets, yes, but also diversification of tax brackets or taxable assets as well. So you've got your non-qualified money, which is just money in the savings account, stock market, things like that. You've paid taxes, and it's sitting over there growing. You've got your Roth money because you can't put that much in Roth, and you also have your IRA money. If you have those all together, then you can work and stay in a lower or a more moderate tax bracket all the days of your life.
Finally, everybody's continuing to get into real estate, the fear of missing out.
Time to flip a house, Kevin. And I've got a deal for you.
But your thoughts on this ever-evolving real estate market where, I think we have more agents than we have homes to sell.
Yeah. It's a golden time to be in real estate, and it's also a difficult time. For that reason, there really are golden times, and that's when you've taken the pool of agents down to the people that are really professional, and then sales start to pick up. I'm not going to say we're in the sixth inning or seventh inning. Who knows what inning we're in? What a dumb comment people make about the market. We've been in the ninth inning for years now. That's all it does is it guarantees to make you look stupid. So to sit here and say that we're running out of steam, we're running out of houses. We don't know how many people are going to move here. We don't know how long the economy will continue to boom. So I think you just want to be recognizing that we're a little bit longer in the tooth here, and it is a much more difficult place to move into. Try to find a builder, if you want to build a house. I've been working on a remodel pretty much since I moved in, right? And that was over a year ago. It's hard. It's a hard thing to get people out to get the jobs done. It's a great time to be in the trades, that's for sure.
Our great friend Dave Petzo, the Petzo Center, Petzo Financial. Thank you, sir.
Kevin, thank you. Have a great week, okay? I mean,
right.
you are going to have a great week.
Sorry about that grilling you had at Channel 7.
Well, it was
rough ones.
It's nothing compared to you. Yeah. If I can survive you, I can survive anything Channel 7 can bring on.
Dave Petzo.
See you later.
You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Morgan.
Good morning, Kevin.
Hi-de-ho. Good morning. You in the mood to talk politics? I am. We'll find out if you are as well. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin at KIDOTalkRadio.com if you'd like to email. Kevin Miller on Facebook. No, not that Kevin Miller, that Kevin Miller. A lot of Kevin Millers. Anyway, the paper's at it again. What was it, last week, 2 weeks ago? They had the big profile of Brad Little, Lieutenant Governor Brad Little. Now they have the one of Paulette Jordan, and she's excited. The children are excited about seeing her, and they're treating her like a celebrity and such. So I'll share a little excerpts from, the liberal morning paper, if you will. We need to come up with a name for them. They were treating me like a celebrity, but it was more like they were engaged in a movement. And she's talking about little kids inspiring her. Quote, that really inspired me. These were young children from very rural communities where nobody pays attention to them, and they have a high suicide rate in their community, a low success rate, a low go-on rate. So we were able to encourage and inspire them to the ultimate gift you can receive. So when you take a look at Paulette Jordan, let's see, none of her fellow Democrats endorsed her. Neither did the state party leaders. A.J. Belukoff outspent her 5-1. She beat A.J. by 18 points. By the way, you have A.J. endorsing her now. It's kind of strange when you think about it, because Paulette Jordan had her victory party at a different place than the state Democratic Party. And when I declared that the governor's race is already over, which it is, look, you don't even have Democrats united behind their candidate. Maybe it's due to relatability. Maybe it's due to Paulette Jordan is more of a millennial as opposed to your traditional Idaho Democrat. And again, the Liberal Daily News says she's spoken to CNN, BuzzFeed, all these national publications. You even have somebody doing a short film on her, and a full documentary is in the works. For what? Really? Okay, so she beat A.J. Belukoff. When one thinks of Paulette Jordan, And I know what our audience is. We cheer for the home team. But when one thinks of Paulette Jordan, I mean, what are her values? Hey, I'm going to take the guns. Hey, I'm going to be a liberal. Hey, Bernie Sanders is great. And the Liberal Daily News goes on. She's young, female, Native American, the polar opposite of traditional Idaho politicians. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that if you're not, female, Native American, what have you, then you're a bad person? Is that what the Liberal Daily News is implying? I'm sorry, the Boise Liberal Daily News? Is that what they're implying? Seems to me they are. And I'm looking at this glowing profile, and I just don't see how someone who's getting all this national attention is going to move the bar. Let's see. At some point, her unusual campaign has been prone to uncommon stumbles, including confusion over her February resignation from the Idaho House, and a mistaken staff claim that Jordan was the only Democrat ever to represent North Idaho. And then her campaign people resigned, and she still won. Now, people that are behind Paulette Jordan are going to say, hey, this is great. She's going to do well. She's a candidate of record. But as I said before, you cannot beat what is truly an unbeatable team. I go back to two individuals, three actually, that I have a great deal of respect for. One is the heir apparent, Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, fought a tough campaign, used every resource imaginable, and won. Congressman Labrador worked very hard, had a tough fight with his constituents, didn't have the resources at the end, and that's how races are won and lost. It is a tough thing to do. It is a tough thing to lose a race that you felt you were destined to hold. He's an honorable, credible, conservative guy. Dr. Tommy Ahlquist could have been building buildings, could have been building skyscrapers, decided to invest millions of dollars of his time, effort, and energy and resources into making Idaho better, and it didn't happen for him. Those guys are a lot more competitive than Paulette Jordan. And the progressives, unless you're going to have millions of votes coming from the colleges, I don't see it happening. And by the way, I just don't see a compelling reason to vote for Paulette Jordan. Do you? Now, there's a Netroots thing, and this is where all the libs get together, and Miss Jordan was bragging about the state of Idaho. We are flipping our state for the better during the far left meeting for political activists. Not to be blue. We are not flipping it to be purple. We are doing it for a greater good because we are showing up against cronyism. We are against the corrupt corporate corruption. We are truly about reflecting the good of the people. Okay. Give me an example of that. If you're looking for an individual who is capable of representing Republicans, capable of representing libertarians and independents and Democrats, we are above the political party system. She, again, sounds like Bernie Sanders. I can't see this paying out. Now, I did wonder where her money is coming from. Her largest donors in the primary were the Native American tribes. Idahoans want someone in the State House who will represent them, their working class roots, and not corporations. That's a good starting point. But the corporations, the lobbying group, are so well entrenched, as we saw in this Republican primary, I just don't see it happening. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And thanks to Ray. Now, these are excerpts. They're a little choppy, but this is Paulette Jordan election night.
That all of us, we are all one. Like all of you, I am a Westerner. I was raised by Idaho. I come here on the vision and the prayers of our ancestors. They suffered and they sacrificed for far too long for us not to see this win tonight. My heart breaks when I see that our kids don't have access to the best public education that we should be providing for them. We are leaving our future out. But today is that first step, that we move in the right direction and really truly believe in the fact that Idaho belongs to all of us. And never again will we stand down. We will always stand up with each other.
Right, there we have it. The only thing missing is the Hulk Hogan Real American theme behind her. So, back to this point, if elected governor, Jordan would shatter minority and gender glass ceilings. Now, I don't know of any gender or minority glass ceilings in Idaho or in America. I do know that if you are female, that if you're minority, you get a lot of chances that majority folks don't get. Idaho's first female governor and its first Native American governor, and the nation's first Native American governor. And then it goes on and on. She's the first woman to win a major party political nomination, and it's a big deal. Okay, so what? Are we making this against corporations? Are we making this against, she's the West Hillary Clinton? She's the West Bernie Sanders? And when I hear her speak, I'm not feeling it. But again, I have a bias. And many people have emailed me and said, Kevin Miller, be careful what you wish for, Kevin Miller. You could underestimate her like you did in the primary. I just don't see it. And you're going to have the press fawning all over her, saying that she can shatter the Republican dominance in the gem state of Idaho. Okay, what is it? Women make 53% of the voting public here? Ladies, is she your girl? Are we going to start voting for people because, as many would argue, and I was tempted to do in 2008, I thought it was time for an African-American president. I didn't. I went down with the John McCain ship. I can remember doing election night results, people calling in, laughing at me because I said McCain can still pull it off. Mitt Romney can still pull it off. And then Donald Trump did. But, you go back to the Dr. King statement. It's about the character, not if you're, whatever gender you are. So that's what I'd like to talk about. Again, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, the Paulette Jordan factor. And again, she's opened a campaign office. She's going to have a lot of money out of state. But I think this isn't even going to be close. I think it's going to be 70-30. Now, I understand if you're in the media and that's your job, you have to cover it. Just like we're talking about it, I just don't see it playing out. Do you? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio.
A successful business is made up of a lot of parts. As a business,
Idaho's very popular and very conservative governor, Butch Otter.
There we have it from Steve Croft talking about Chobani many years ago. So who will replace Governor Otter? Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And, as schools begin this week, obviously you're hearing the public service announcements. You're hearing the news media. You're hearing other people say, hey, be very careful. I think that the toughest job that one could have lately, amongst many tough jobs, is driving a school bus or being a driver in general, like my boy from FedEx or UPS or what have you. You got to deal with so many crazies on the road. And unfortunately, because of the growth here in the Treasure Valley from the people from California, and look, there are some good people from California, but you folks from California, you know who I'm talking about, like when you're in the Fred Meyer or the Walmart or the Winco parking lot and the guy with the big white 4Runner decides that he's not going to stop even though you have the right of way, and you go, not so fast, California guy. Maybe they did that in your state, but here we stop at the stop signs. So in all seriousness, we take a look at the first day of school that's starting throughout the Treasure Valley, and obviously very common sense. But, this program in particular has been talking about common sense on the roads for quite some time. Even Sunday mornings on your way to church, somebody once again in a big Cadillac Escalade has to ride my bumper. She's a female on her phone, multitasking. And I'm thinking to myself, is it really that important to get to Fred Meyer to whatever you're going to do after getting out of church, that you have to ride somebody's bumper? And so I suppose the way that we could take a look at driver safety is, if that's your kid at the bus stop, if that's your kid on the bus, if that's your kid that's trying to cross a busy intersection. And these accidents can be preventable. Very similar to what we talked about. Thankfully, the fire department and the police department caught that person that kept his kid in the car last week. Was it 110, 120 in the car? Who does that and is a responsible person? And in the world that we live in today, it's so easy to get segmented. It's so easy to listen to music or mind-numbing, deaf-starting music than to figure out where we are, to isolate. You go to a gym, and what do you see at gyms? Well, people wearing earbuds and all that, and then doing their own thing, not talking anymore, not conversing. That's the way we are in our vehicles. But you look left, you look right. Again, people today are crazy. You have to be extra defensive. You have to have that spidey sense. You have to be like Yoda when you're on the roads. Case in point, last night, myself and Mrs. Miller were on our way to church. And what happens? A skateboarder on Old State Street in Star. Again, a busy highway. This kid doesn't look, just veers right into traffic and keeps going. Thankfully, we were a distance away from him, but you're thinking to yourself, whatever happened to parents telling kids, ingraining in them, look both ways before you cross the street? I guess that's gone the way of the cassette recorder. I guess that's gone the way of the VHS tapes. So you have more of a public that is not in tune to their own safety. On the other side, you have people that are, whether overly caffeinated or what, that are worried about getting someplace on time, that are rushing through stoplights and stuff. So very dangerous, right? When you're going through an intersection. And now we have school starting to compound it. Let's hope, and let's just not hope, let's pray that people won't make dumb decisions that will impact people's lives. And now as school starts, bike riding season gets to be over. The militant bike riders will go away till next summer. Thankfully, some of them are very responsible, like normal people. Some people think that a bike gives them the right of way to act like a goof. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, it comes down to common sense. And as we've discussed and we've blogged about, you have people that the police officers, there's so much craziness going on, they don't have time to be on the roads. Now, I hope they will be with school starting, but it's not just school starting. We have to police ourselves. And it starts with our own behavior. If somebody in front of us runs the light, that doesn't mean that we follow them. Or just because we're late doesn't mean we have to tailgate the person behind. It's common sense, is it not? Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning.
Terry Gebert.
And Kevin Miller in the morning here on KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up next, we'll speak to our great friend Lars Larson, get your thoughts on a few issues there. Most notably, you have Mr. Brennan got his security clearance taken away, and then he's sitting there complaining and calling the president names. If you call the president a name, chances are you're not going to get your security clearance. That'll be coming up with Lars Larson. But back to this point, when we're hearing all these stories, and they are so very important about kid safety, child safety, it comes down to each individual acting responsibly. And if you're new to the area, if you're not new to the area, you know what I'm talking about. Taking that additional time, driving defensively, not being on the phone. Do you remember when our phones were stagnant, when our phones were at home, when we had, whether it was the push buttons, actual push buttons like that, or the rotary dial phones? How did we survive without this constant form of communication? Yes, we had the advent of pagers and beepers, and our life has never been the same. But look, we got along without talking in the car for how many years? The 100 or so year history that we've had vehicles. You kind of think that if it's not hands-free, or even if it is, we can wait until we get to our destination. Chances are the world is not going to end if we're not on the phone and if we're actively engaged in driving the big vehicle. And in Idaho, more often than not, 9 times out of 10, you're either driving an F-150, an F-250, a 350, or some huge big SUV. And look, nothing wrong with that. You've earned it. They're not cheap. They're not expensive. But on the other hand, you've got to anticipate more and be more of a defensive driver, right? Yeah, words to live by. Let's hope and pray we get through this school year with no vehicle issues and no tragedies. That'd be great, wouldn't it? Coming up next, Fox News on your home for Fox News on the radio, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.